let's go ahead and take out the mechanical hard drive of the secondary hard drive. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's simply just removing these 4 black screws here. You want to have the right tools, guys. Don't use a Phillips that's too big, or you're going to just strip these little screws out and kind of make a point of keep. There's typically 3 kinds of screws you'll find on the Dell laptops. This fatter, very short screw, this medium, and then the fatter one. So that's the good news. There's only really 3 screws to mess up. And I'm going to take all 4 of these out. You'll notice there's some blue stuff on there. It looks like it's using a thread locker. And it's the kind of thread locker that's pretty much reusable. But once those 4 are done, you can just kind of slide it out like this. And there you go. But I'm making a point to keep the SATA connectors on the same position. So I'm just taking one of my hard drives. I'm going to simply put it in here. It goes all the way to the end, and we'll put those screws back in. I typically put this one on first. I don't over tighten it. Just make sure to make it snug. I do the other diagonal corner over here. And it's probably the most boring part of it. Now these drives come pre-formatted, but we're going to create a RAID anyway with these, so all that formatting is meaningless for us. Now I just go back and make sure that there's enough. Just a little. I do like a little 16th turn to make sure that that it's nice and snug. The great thing about solid-state drives is they're not susceptible to dropping or vibration as much as the mechanical. So there we go. We're set with that one. We'll put it back in. Just simply get it kind of into. Make sure it's flat first, and then take the little tab and push it. And you know it's set when all the holes line up there. Right, so we're good there. Now, make a note of this, very important. That screw that's a part of the lid. Here and here, this screw and this screw are part of the lid. So don't put one in here. You just put the 3 on these points, put the lid back on, and the 3 screw goes into there. See, big difference from the other chassis. So, see. So I'm going to use the shorter, fatter little screws to secure the secondary hard drive. Again, I don't go too tight with these until the last second. That after they're all roughly in place, kind of get them close. So now that they're kind of close, I'll just give them a few turns so they're snug. Don't overdo it. Don't want to avoid your warranty. Now, speaking of warranty, what does this do to your Dell warranty? Well, fortunately, upgrades like this you're totally allowed to do upgrades on yourself. They don't necessarily void the warranty unless you go ahead and break something during that process. But Dell's very flexible about upgrades, especially if you have the Pro Support warranty or the Gold support that we sell through SolidBox. So if you're technically competent, you can do these yourself without any issue. All right, so let's go ahead and tackle the primary drive. Now this is totally different. You're going to get a little nervous here because there are no screws there. These are all just kind of clasped here by this cradle. So what you have to do is almost use your fingernails or a little pry bar to simultaneously pull up on this while pulling away from the cradle. Okay, you'll see it kind of got some freedom on that side. I recommend you do both sides at the same time and just kind of work it very patiently out of the cradle. See, this other side just came out. I just kind of work it and it comes out. So that's a little scary, but we'll take a little effort to get that out. Just matching the same direction, very critical. Just kind of get the one corner in, then the side, and then push like that to the little dimples match up with the caddy. Now you see it's kind of loose, so you want to just squeeze it on both sides where those tabs are, and it'll be in place. The good news is once the drive's in place, those screws will be engaged through the frame, so that's good. And there you go. So you just go ahead and put it back into the slot. You want to hold this lock open while you push it all the way in. Okay, and if it's flush, you're good. Okay, you're going to make sure that the lock went back in place, and I recommend that you take the little screw, little tiny guy that locked that that clasp, and go ahead and tighten that down right away. Just finger tight. Okay, so you're left with the 4 screws right here. All right, so let's go ahead and use those longer screws to go through the frame and into the hard drive. Don't do it too tight. So when it's all said and done with this primary hard drive, keep in mind that you should be left with 2 screws, and those screws are only needed to keep this lid back onto the bottom of the system. We're going to keep it open because we're going to go ahead and install the primary and secondary memory. Just make sure this is tight. There's a little snugness there. And I loosened the screw here earlier. I'm going to make sure that's nice and snug too. All right, when you have this bottom portion of the laptop exposed, this is actually the secondary memory here. The secondary memory. There's 2 slots here you have access to. Now this is the easy side. Okay, we're going to go and replace them now. It's pretty simple, just like our first video on the 6600. We're going to adjust those. We're going to pull them out at a diagonal. Just very little effort required to do that. And I'm making a point of showing you here that there's a notch on my side of the stick of RAM. So I'm going to take a look at the replacement RAM and make sure that we turn it over in the same orientation. You'll see I'm going to just kind of go at a 45-degree angle and make sure it's seated into the slot at a 45-degree angle, pushing it in quite a bit and making sure that it's kind of stopped. And then I'll push down and the clasps hug it. I'm going to just make sure that it looks evenly seated there. There's a little notch where it engages the RAM stick, and that was pretty easy, right? Now, most blue screens of death happen because of bad memory placement. What does that mean? It means that there's not a good engagement between the actual leads and the receptacle or the socket. So you want to make sure that this is done right. Turn that over. Don't be concerned that they don't look the same. These are actually 180 from each other. Again, at a 45-degree angle, kind of push it. Just go in so nicely. This new chassis is actually very nice. And just push it down, kind of verify that the clasps are secure. And there you go. You just installed the secondary memory. Now, the primary side is a little more difficult. We're going to show you that. All right, we're going to turn the system over, but before I do so, it's probably safe to put the bottom cover on. And all you do is just let it rest on the bottom surface. Now, if it's lifted up, there might be something wrong. Make sure it's flush before you pull the lid towards you or towards the battery side. If there's any resistance on doing that, or it bubbles up, then there's probably a wire that's gotten stuck between the bottom lid and the frame. In this case, it went over real smoothly. Like I said, you'll have 2 screws left over. They go right here and right here. Kind of finger tighten those as well. Don't put the battery back in at this point. Do not put the battery back in. No, don't do this. Why? Because once the battery's plugged in, your motherboard is hot. Okay? Anything you do with RAM, not good. Don't want to short anything out. Ruin a very expensive piece of hardware. So, for the primary side, you can open up the lid. Hard to remove because there's not a real big gap here on the side. Okay, so it's probably a safe idea to have a plastic pry tool available. So I'm gonna go get that. I'll be right back.